Hey everyone, if you're a fan of indie games, odds are you're also a fan of 2D games and games that draw inspiration from retro greats. And if you're a fan of The Legend of Zelda, the Girl from Arkanya is most likely a game that you're going to want to check out for yourself by the time I'm done with this review. It features a lot of similar elements from one of my absolute favorite games of all time, with The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, but just overall, it is clearly inspired by Zelda, but I think it does enough to make the formula its own to keep it interesting and not just feel like a rehash of games we've already played before. For this adventure, you're going to take on the role of Marissa, and very early on in the game, she is going to recruit a companion, and not one that's annoying.
Hey, listen!
No, I said not annoying.
Hey, listen!
Okay, that's enough. This time around, you're going to have a capybara as your companion, and what's really cool about this is that the capybara is 100% playable, and you could switch easily right between Marissa and the capybara. And if you have a friend that you can play this with, local co-op, you can absolutely do that too. Unfortunately, I had no way to try that out, but I think it's a cool feature, and some of the dungeons, which are very heavy on the character switching, would have been so much easier and so much more fun if I didn't have to keep switching back and forth between the two. But anyways, the story here is that Marissa is a treasure hunter, and she's trying to build a reputation for herself and carry on the family's legacy. But that's just way too easy, right? Of course it's way too easy. There had to be a terrible turn of events, and then Marissa heads out on her journey, and like I already mentioned, you're gonna bump into a capybara very early on, and then off you go on your adventure. That's the basic premise of the game, and to be perfectly honest with you, I'm just gonna leave it at that, because this has one of the most complex stories I've ever seen in a Zelda-like. The opening story scene is ridiculously long. It was like 4 or 5 minutes long. Like, I sat there for so long, I was like, holy crap, like, they mean business with this. And if you're into lore in your games and you really care about the story, which is not really something that Zelda does a whole lot with their 2D games. Like, yeah, there's story, but there's not a heavy focus on it. It always tends to be the same. Oh, save Zelda from Ganon. That's so not the case here. There's tons of lore sprinkled out throughout the entirety of the game, including with the collectibles, as there are books and artifacts. And each of these collectibles has a whole bunch of additional lore tied to it. So if you like to get just lost into the lore and the story of a game, you're in for a treat. It's really well done, but for my taste as a gameplay first person, it was a little bit too much. It was on the other end of the spectrum, but it's really well done. So if you like story, you're in for a treat. If you don't, you can skip a lot of it, but you might miss out on some hints that you're going to need to figure out where to go next. Now, the world map in this is deceivingly large, because when you look at the overworld map, which is the only map in the game, there are no dungeon maps, there are 7 unique zones that you'll unlock those as you progress through the game. And the map is so far zoomed out that you look at it and you think this is kind of small, but once you get into each of these zones, they're actually quite large. And this introduced some confusion for me because the map is really deceiving and it's so hard to tell exactly where you are in a zone. I think they could have done this a bit better and made the map more zoomed in, and that's certainly my main complaint with the map. It's better than not having one, but they definitely should have made it a little bit more detailed, as it did cause me some confusion. Additionally, there are 6 total dungeons. Each one of these plays completely different and is an absolute blast to play through. None of them have a dungeon map, but the only one that really would have benefited from a map was about halfway through the game, where you're in these 2 towers, and a lot of it looks the same, and there's a lot of portals and staircases, and it's really easy to get lost there. But the dungeons are so much fun. They are a good mix of puzzles and also the combat, which is really enjoyable. Now, your character has your run-of-the-mill sword attacks. That's the only weapon you're ever going to have, but there are also some sub-weapons. It has your standard Zelda sub-weapons, lantern, hook shot, bombs, but it does also have some new ones, so it's not a complete rehash. And if you look in the upper left, you can see not only your health, but you can also see that you have an energy meter, which does regenerate slowly, and this is how you carry out your sub-weapon attacks, with the exception of things that are consumables like the bombs. And then also, you can see these 3 diamonds. When you build this up all the way, you can do a special attack. And which special attack you do depends on which element or which power you have, because each dungeon will reward you with a new dance. After you save the dungeon's priestess, she'll teach you a new dance, and you'll use these for not just the combat, but also for some puzzle solving elements in traversing to new areas. The way this game works in terms of your progression is that at the start it's pretty linear, pretty closed off, but little by little it will open up more and more of the world to you, and you will bump into some roadblocks as you do need a new power or a new item before you can traverse there. So it has a little touch of Metroidvania style progression kind of sprinkled in there. There are, of course, plenty of different upgrades, health and energy upgrades. You can acquire these different ways. The way you earn money in this is a bit different. It's not like you go chop down bushes and you're going to get some rupees and then you spend those. No, it's all about being a treasure hunter. So there's tons of different treasures that you can acquire and then sell for different currency. Additionally, building up the museum with the artifacts that you find, which are collectible type number 1, or the books in the library, that's collectible type number 2, are other ways that you can also earn some extra coin. This system works really well, and I actually liked it quite a bit because it did feel like I was a real treasure hunter, and that was a feeling I really enjoyed while playing through this. I did like that it wasn't just money was being found in places, it was focused on treasure, but I do have a gripe with this because your treasure and your materials that you need for crafting and other quests in the game are all on one screen, and there are no icons or indications when you have an item that you need for a quest. So if an NPC is asking you for some iron ore and you have this in your treasure inventory and you just hit sell all, it will sell your quest items. And this is super annoying when it does happen. There were times where I had a bunch of a material, I sold it, and then 2 seconds later I needed it. It really should put an exclamation point on the icons for any material type that's going to be needed for any sort of crafting or quest to prevent this from happening. There's no way to prevent it from being sold if you hit sell all. So all I can really tell you is be careful when you sell your treasure. Otherwise, you're going to need to go out and acquire some more and grind a little bit. Something I haven't mentioned yet, but should be fairly obvious, is the art design is really good here. I love the pixel art. You're going to see some of the environments and some of the trees and things like that clearly be drawn to resemble Zelda, which I have already mentioned that was the main inspiration here, and that's clear. And then additionally, the music here is really good. The music's very good across the board. There were a few tracks that were better than others, but none of them I would consider bad. So if you're an audiophile, you're in for a treat. Really great soundtrack to accompany the awesome pixel art. Over the course of the game, there's plenty of different enemy types, and killing different enemy types will reward you with different treasures or materials. So it has that system going on. So you need to kind of remember what enemies drop which items, because if you need a specific material or treasure for a quest or a crafting, there is no tracking of this. There is no quest log, there's no bestiary, there's nothing like this. This felt very old school in that regard, where not much is tracked. You have an inventory screen, a treasure screen, and then a very generic map that I wish was a little bit more detailed. Racking up a lot of coin means you could purchase upgrades and other materials from various shops. There is no equipment in terms of defense that you're going to ever upgrade or acquire. The only thing you're going to have in that regard is a sword, which you can upgrade like 6 or so times at the blacksmith, which is right at the start. There's a really big and nice town that you start in at the very beginning of the game. Talking to NPCs will at times net you some side quests. Of course, right? You got to do some side quests. Now, the thing with the side quests are that they really strike a nerve with me because they are one of my like absolute pet peeves in terms of side quests, and that's fetch quests. You get the runaround so much in these quests to the point where the main character, Marissa, actually makes a comment about how annoying it is to run everybody else's errands. I mean, if you wrote this dialogue, didn't you think to yourself, like, maybe players aren't gonna find doing this fun? Like, it's one thing to have a back and then a forth, but this is like several back and forths to do a singular quest. So you're just fast traveling all over the map, which thankfully there are fast travel locations, and they're spread out enough where you typically don't have to backtrack too much, but I still just did not like the side questing in this, and I did most of it. So it really hindered my enjoyment by doing this. You do get rewarded accordingly, but these aren't fun side quests. So expect to not have a good time if you deviate off the story path and do some of the side activities. The last thing I haven't mentioned yet that I really want to mention is the boss fights. The boss fights are excellent and feel like a proper boss fight. The bosses are not pushovers. They typically have multiple different attacks or phases, and whittling them down will really test you and test your skill and your understanding of not just your kit, but the different patterns and telltale signs that they're throwing at you as they execute their various attacks. Also, switching between your characters can be beneficial. So this is just another layer to the gameplay that you need to juggle in order to emerge victorious. But what I will say about the game overall is that it's pretty easy because you have so many different healing items at your disposal. There's cheese, beer, rum, potions. There's a lot of ways to heal here, and if you do side quests and have your pouches maxed out, you can carry a lot of these. Probably not going to pose too much of a challenge for most players unless you're just straight up not good at games or not good at games like this. But I think well balanced in the point where I actually did need to heal, especially with the final boss. The final boss was actually really hard and quite a difficulty spike, so I did chew through a lot of my healing items. I won't show the final boss because, hey, that's spoilers, but I did want to at least mention that. Overall, I think that Girl of Arkanya is a really fun Zelda-like, and one that's probably going to fly under the radar, and I appreciate you watching my review all the way to the end. I'm rambling at this point, but I really did enjoy the game. It does have some rough edges, which I did outline. I did run into some bugs, but I'm pretty sure the developer is going to fix them, so I didn't go in detail on the bugs, because A, I reported them to them, and B, other players did as well. So hopefully some fixes are coming to fix its rough edges, and if they do a sequel, I hope they do some more interesting side quests and also a more intricate map, because it's lacking a bit there, and it could be confusing as the only navigation they really give you is a red X on the map, and it's up to you to figure out how to get there. But when the map isn't detailed enough for you to tell exactly where you are, that does become frustrating. So this is easily a game that I can recommend. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, right now, only available on Steam. But who knows? Hopefully, if it does well enough, it'll land on console as well. Hope you enjoyed my coverage of the Girl of Arkanya. It took me a few days to play through this. I'm a few days late. I wanted to have this video out for release, but hey, I've been busy. As always, though, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.